Carl Jung discovered that society's most feared individual isn't the criminal, the rebel, or the activist. It's the person everyone calls lazy, but who secretly harbors world-changing ambitions. Jung spent decades studying these individuals and found something that shattered everything psychologists believed about human potential. The lazy genius appears to do nothing, yet their ideas reshape entire industries. They seem unmotivated, but their visions are more ambitious than anyone around them. Today, I'll reveal Jung's most controversial theory about why these individuals terrify everyone around them, including you. Because what Jung found wasn't just a personality type. It was evidence that our entire understanding of achievement might be completely backwards. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the person everyone dismisses as lazy might actually be operating from the highest level of human consciousness, and why that threatens everything society believes about success. Jung's clinical practice revealed a disturbing pattern that changed how he viewed human achievement forever. He documented case after case of individuals who appeared lazy to everyone around them, but possessed insights that left him speechless. These weren't typical underachievers. They demonstrated what I like to call effortless depth, the ability to see solutions others missed, understand connections others couldn't grasp, and envision possibilities others deemed impossible. Yet they seemed incapable of following basic productivity systems. Jung's observations revealed individuals whose minds operated like vast libraries, while their bodies remained frustratingly still. What I find fascinating is how society sees the stillness and judges the library unread. But that's not the most disturbing part. Jung realized these people weren't broken or unmotivated. They were accessing something that productivity culture actively destroys in most people. The pattern was consistent across dozens of cases. Brilliant insights paired with apparent inaction. Revolutionary ideas coupled with resistance to conventional achievement methods. And what Jung discovered about their minds will shock you. Here's the fascinating fact Jung uncovered. What we call lazy geniuses are actually what Jung identified as visionary creatives, individuals who access what he termed autonomous, self-activating processes from the unconscious mind. Jung distinguished between two types of creative individuals: the psychological artist, who draws on personal, conscious experiences, and the visionary artist, who serves as a vessel for the collective unconscious. The lazy genius falls into this second category. They're not consciously generating ideas, they're receiving them. Jung observed that true creativity originates not from the conscious ego, but from the depths of the unconscious. What appears as laziness is actually the mind creating optimal conditions for what Jung called spontaneous outpouring of archetypal images and motifs from the collective unconscious. This explains why lazy geniuses often have their best ideas during activities others consider unproductive. They're not forcing conscious thought. They're allowing unconscious processes to emerge naturally, exactly as Jung documented in his studies of visionary creativity. But here's what Jung found that productivity gurus don't want you to know, and it gets even more controversial. Jung realized that lazy geniuses prove that productivity culture might be not just unnecessary, but actually counterproductive for certain types of intelligence. If genuine insights come from unconscious processing rather than conscious effort, then everything society teaches about achievement becomes questionable. The lazy genius represents living proof that maybe the hardest workers aren't the most valuable contributors. This creates what I term productivity anxiety based on Jung's observations. The uncomfortable realization that their constant busyness might be less effective than someone else's apparent inactivity. Jung's studies suggested that productive people fear the lazy genius because he demonstrates that effortless insight can surpass effortful labor. This threatens the entire foundation upon which the productive person has built their identity. But wait, there's something Jung discovered that's far more disturbing than social fear. Jung made a discovery about lazy geniuses that disturbed him so deeply he initially hesitated to publish it. They don't just think differently, they access collective intelligence that others can't reach. Here's what I call Jung's 5-minute recognition test. The process. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Sit quietly without any stimulation. No phone, no music, no task. Just observe what happens in your mind. Lazy genius. Response. Ideas, solutions, or insights begin emerging naturally. Your mind starts making connections without effort. Productive person. Response. Anxiety builds. You feel compelled to do something. The silence feels uncomfortable and wasteful. Jung found that lazy geniuses demonstrate unusual connection to what he termed the collective unconscious, humanity's shared repository of knowledge, patterns, and insights. Jung observed that these individuals seem to download solutions from sources beyond their personal experience. What I find remarkable is how they know things they never learned, see patterns they never studied, and understand systems they never analyzed. But that's not even the craziest part about what Jung discovered. If you've ever been called lazy despite having big dreams, write this in the comments. My mind works differently, and that's my strength. Jung identified why society responds to lazy geniuses with such hostility. They represent everything productivity culture fears about human nature. Modern productivity ideology rests on one fundamental belief. Human value comes from measurable output. The lazy genius threatens this entire system by demonstrating that the most valuable contributions often come from immeasurable processes. What I call the productivity shadow, inspired by Jung's shadow work, represents society's unconscious terror that maybe human worth isn't determined by how busy someone appears. But here's the surprising insight that changes everything. Jung's most shocking discovery wasn't just theoretical. He documented how visionary creatives access what he called primordial images from the collective unconscious, translating universal, transpersonal content into insights that resonate across humanity. Jung observed that these individuals act as mediums, channeling archetypal patterns that exist beyond personal experience. This wasn't mystical thinking. Jung documented specific cases where visionary creatives produced works containing symbols and themes they had never consciously encountered, yet which appeared across cultures throughout history. What I call the primordial download pattern shows how lazy geniuses access the same archetypal layer that Jung identified in visionary artists. While others work from personal conscious knowledge, lazy geniuses tap into what Jung called the universal transpersonal layer of the psyche. Jung realized that this process can't be forced through conscious effort. The individual must become what he called a vessel, creating space for unconscious content to emerge naturally. This explains why lazy geniuses resist productivity systems that rely on conscious, ego-driven effort. And the historical evidence for this theory will blow your mind. Jung discovered that history's greatest breakthroughs consistently came from individuals society labeled as lazy geniuses, people who appeared unproductive but generated world-changing insights. Einstein's laziness. Colleagues criticized Einstein for spending hours daydreaming instead of working on assignments. His revolutionary theories emerged during these apparently unproductive periods. Tesla's impracticality. Tesla was considered lazy because he preferred mental experimentation to hands-on work. His visualization techniques produced inventions others couldn't understand. Darwin's delay. Darwin was mocked for taking decades to publish his evolution theory. His apparent procrastination was actually unconscious processing that ensured his ideas could withstand scrutiny. But here's what makes this pattern even more incredible. Jung documented exactly how this process works through his theory of creativity as a play instinct. He wrote that the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. This is the authentic Jung principle that explains lazy genius behavior. What society interprets as laziness is actually what Jung called the play instinct, the mind's natural creative mechanism that operates through fantasy and imagination rather than forced intellectual effort. Jung's documented process. The conscious mind steps back, allowing unconscious content to emerge. Fantasy and imagination become the raw material for creative insights. The individual acts as a translator, converting archetypal images into practical applications. The process appears effortless because it's driven by inner necessity, not external pressure. Jung emphasized that this play instinct can't be scheduled or optimized. It emerges from what he called inner necessity, an autonomous drive that operates according to unconscious rhythms, not conscious productivity demands. But the implications of Jung's discovery go far beyond individual success. Comment below if you felt guilty for not being constantly productive. I refuse to perform productivity for others. Jung's most revolutionary insight was that visionary creatives serve an essential evolutionary function for humanity. They preserve and advance collective intelligence, while everyone else focuses on individual productivity. What I call Jung's collective intelligence theory suggests that human consciousness exists in layers, with most people accessing only surface-level individual thinking. Lazy geniuses naturally connect to deeper collective layers where humanity's accumulated wisdom resides. While productive people work within existing systems, lazy geniuses access insights that transcend current limitations. Their apparent laziness is actually consciousness operating at collective rather than individual levels. Building on Jung's work, I believe the lazy genius thinks with humanity's mind, not just their own. Their insights serve collective evolution, not personal advancement. This is why their ideas often seem impossibly advanced for their time, but there's something even more significant about what Jung discovered. Jung recognized that lazy geniuses face a fundamental challenge: how to contribute their insights to a world that demands constant productivity performance. What I call the integration paradox, based on Jung's observations, shows how lazy geniuses must remain connected to unconscious processing while engaging consciously with society. Too much social engagement disrupts their unconscious access, but too little engagement prevents their insights from reaching others. Jung developed 3 integration strategies. Strategy 1: rhythm protection. Lazy geniuses must identify and protect their natural energy cycles, even when society pressures them to adopt conventional schedules. Strategy 2: selective collaboration. Rather than trying to work with everyone, find the rare individuals who can appreciate and support unconventional approaches. Strategy 3: translation skills. Learn to translate unconscious insights into language productive people can understand. But Jung discovered something that makes this integration even more crucial. Jung developed a comprehensive framework for identifying lazy geniuses that revealed why these individuals are so consistently overlooked and misunderstood. What I call Jung's internal identification signs. Sign 1: productivity. Anxiety, traditional productivity advice, creates more stress than results. You feel like you're fighting against your nature when trying to follow conventional achievement methods. Sign 2: insight emergence. Your best ideas come during activities others consider unproductive: showering, walking, daydreaming, or simply lying in bed. Sign 3: energy unpredictability. Your productive periods don't match normal schedules. You might be useless at 9 a.m., but brilliant at midnight. Sign 4: confidence without proof. You believe in ideas others consider unrealistic, not because you can prove them, but because they feel true at levels deeper than logic. But Jung's most important discovery was about the social transformation these individuals could create. If you've had your best ideas during downtime while others were grinding, Comment, "My rest is my research." Jung documented something crucial about visionary creatives that explains why society fears lazy geniuses. He observed that the human personality of the artist is often bled for the benefit of the creative element. Jung noted that connection to the creative, unconscious realm comes at a high price. Visionary individuals often experience social isolation or psychological imbalance because they're channeling content that doesn't fit conventional social frameworks. What I call Jung's genius burden theory shows how the lazy genius speaks, in Jung's words, to a temporal world out of a world eternal. They're translating timeless, archetypal content into a world focused on immediate practical concerns. This creates what Jung identified as a fundamental conflict. The genius operates from eternal, universal perspectives, while society demands temporal, individual productivity. The lazy genius isn't lazy. They're struggling to bridge two completely different levels of consciousness. Jung observed that this process is often disturbing and intrusive to both the individual and society. The genius can't simply turn off their connection to archetypal content, even when it makes them appear unproductive or impractical to others. But there's one final revelation that ties everything together. Jung's research revealed that visionary creatives serve an essential function for collective human development. They translate archetypal content from the collective unconscious into forms that can advance human understanding. What Jung called the visionary artist taps into what he termed primordial images, fundamental patterns of human experience that exist across all cultures and time periods. The lazy genius accesses these same archetypal layers, but applies them to practical problem-solving rather than artistic creation. Jung observed that the most profound and meaningful contributions come from individuals who serve as vessels for the collective unconscious. While psychological types work from personal experience, visionary types channel transpersonal content that speaks to universal human needs and possibilities. This explains why lazy genius insights often seem impossibly advanced for their time. They're not just thinking ahead, they're accessing archetypal patterns that represent humanity's deepest potential, regardless of current cultural limitations. Jung believed that suppressing visionary individuals represents humanity's unconscious rejection of its own evolutionary potential. The lazy genius preserves connection to archetypal wisdom that could guide collective development toward higher consciousness levels. But Jung believed this patience serves not just individual fulfillment, but collective advancement toward more sophisticated consciousness levels. Jung predicted that lazy geniuses who maintain their authentic development despite social pressure will eventually be recognized as pioneers who preserved humanity's connection to its deepest intelligence during a period of collective productivity obsession. What I call Jung's resolution framework proposed that lazy geniuses serve humanity best not by adapting to current expectations, but by maintaining their authentic consciousness until society evolves to appreciate their contributions. This requires extraordinary patience and self-trust, because the validation they seek might not come for decades. But Jung believed this patience serves collective advancement toward more sophisticated consciousness levels. Building on Jung's predictions, I believe lazy geniuses who maintain their authentic development despite social pressure will eventually be recognized as pioneers who preserved humanity's connection to its deepest intelligence. And the evidence for this prediction is already emerging. Comment if you're ready to trust your natural rhythm instead of forcing society's timeline. I trust my process, not their pressure. Jung's predictions about lazy geniuses are being validated by modern neuroscience and technology trends that prove his theories decades ahead of their time. Neuroscience confirmation. Recent brain imaging studies show that breakthrough insights occur during default mode network activation, exactly the brain state that lazy geniuses naturally access during apparent downtime. Technology evolution. As AI handles routine tasks, human value is shifting toward exactly the type of creative insight that unconscious processing provides, validating Jung's prediction that visionary consciousness would become increasingly valuable. Cultural shifts, remote work, flexible schedules, and outcome-based evaluation are creating conditions where lazy genius approaches can finally be recognized and rewarded. What I find remarkable about Jung's foresight is how he predicted that the future would belong to those who can access intelligence beyond individual thinking. The lazy genius preserves this access, while society learns to value what it has long dismissed. Jung's emphasis on the play instinct and fantasy as the raw material for all creative work is now being validated by research showing that unstructured mental time leads to breakthrough innovations. The transformation Jung predicted is happening now. The question is whether you'll recognize your role in it before society catches up to what Jung knew decades ago. Remember Jung's shocking discovery that society's most feared individual isn't the criminal, rebel, or activist, but the person everyone calls lazy, who secretly harbors world-changing ambitions? After decades of studying these individuals, Jung realized they represent something far more significant than alternative personality types. They're examples of what he called visionary creatives, individuals operating from the highest level of human consciousness, accessing collective intelligence and translating archetypal content into practical insights. Jung's research revealed that what society labels as laziness is actually what he termed the play instinct, acting from inner necessity, the mind's most sophisticated creative mechanism operating at unconscious levels most people never reach. The lazy genius isn't failing at productivity. They're succeeding at what Jung called visionary creativity. Most importantly, Jung discovered that visionary individuals serve as vessels for the collective unconscious, channeling what he called primordial images that speak to universal human potential. While everyone else optimizes existing systems, they preserve connection to archetypal wisdom that enables transcendent breakthroughs. This is why society fears them, not because they're unproductive, but because they prove that everything we've been taught about achievement might be backwards. They demonstrate that the most valuable contributions come from what Jung called autonomous, self-activating processes that can't be forced, scheduled, or optimized. Your apparent laziness isn't a character flaw that needs correction. You're what Jung identified as a visionary type, operating from consciousness levels that access what he called the universal, transpersonal layer of the psyche. Your insights emerge from the same archetypal sources that Jung documented in history's greatest creative breakthroughs. Jung observed that visionary individuals often pay a high price. The human personality is often bled for the benefit of the creative element. Your struggle with conventional productivity isn't personal failure. It's evidence that you're channeling content from what Jung called a world eternal into a temporal world. Jung believed that lazy geniuses who maintain their authentic development despite social pressure become bridges between humanity's current limitations and its archetypal potential. You're not just developing your own consciousness, you're preserving access to what Jung called the collective unconscious that could transform how our species approaches its greatest challenges. Society fears the lazy genius because they represent proof that human potential operates through what Jung called the play instinct, rather than forced effort. Your laziness isn't your weakness. It's your connection to what Jung identified as humanity's deepest creative source. And that connection might be exactly what humanity needs for its next evolutionary leap. If this revelation about Jung's visionary creative theory resonates with you, wait until you discover what Jung called the dangerous awakening, when visionary individuals finally stop hiding their archetypal insights and start reshaping the world around them. That's a story that will completely change how you see your own potential. Subscribe for more insights into Jung's authentic theories about human potential that could revolutionize how you understand not just individual development, but humanity's collective evolution toward the consciousness levels Jung documented in his groundbreaking work on the creative mind. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.